Meussen. I'm the Chairman, President, CEO of Badger Meter. It's Meussen.
Okay, and so tell us about the inspiration for this innovation center.
Several years ago, I traveled to Tel Aviv in Israel to visit a company called Kinrat, and this is an operation that is funded by the Israeli government, and it's in one building, and there are about a dozen startup companies, entrepreneurs, developing new water technology in that building. And the Israeli government gives free rent to anybody who has a water technology idea to work in that building. I went there for a day, and one day I sat in the room, and all 12 of these entrepreneurs came in one after another and either put a prototype on the table or showed me a PowerPoint presentation explaining what they were developing. And at the end, the representative of the Israeli government said, "Now, is there anything here you'd like to hear more about, you'd like to consider licensing?" And subsequently, we ended up licensing one of the technologies. This is what the government does to create water technology startups in their country. So as I was flying home about that, after that, I thought, we could do something like that in Milwaukee, but we could do it one better. It's one thing to simply put up a building and bring entrepreneurs there, but it's another thing to put up a building that brings the whole ecosystem of innovation into one place. For an entrepreneur to work in a building with other entrepreneurs is great, but wouldn't it be great if that entrepreneur worked in a building with existing companies, scientists from 100-year-old companies that are working on new technologies? So our idea was in Milwaukee to build a business incubator, but on steroids. And so we call it a business accelerator. And the idea is that we have a 7-story building down in the 5th Ward near the Iron Horse Hotel. And in that building, we are going to have not only a couple floors dedicated to business startups and entrepreneurs, we're also going to have the research labs for Badger Meter and A.O. Smith, two companies that are over 100 years old and are doing a very cutting-edge work in water technology. We're also going to have the School of Freshwater Sciences. We'll have an entire floor there. We're also going to have the offices of the Greater Milwaukee Committee, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. Several of the University of Wisconsin Whitewater will have an outreach office there. And the idea is that the entrepreneur who comes in there and says, "I want to try to start up my business, I want to work on this," will have exposure to not just other entrepreneurs, but to scientists, to graduate students, to professors from the School of Freshwater Science, to the business community, to all of this innovative environment. And to really add to it, to really put the icing on the cake, is the fact that when an entrepreneur is trying to develop a new idea for a water technology product, one of the most burdensome things is the testing. Generally, they'll develop a prototype, send it off to a lab. A month later, the results will come back. They'll tweak the prototype, send it off. A month later, the results will come back. It takes a long time and a lot of money. We are going to have a flow lab, a state-of-the-art flow lab in this building, which is available for anybody in the building to use free of charge. So now our entrepreneur will come downstairs. Instead of sending off to the lab, we'll bring his prototype downstairs to the main floor, and we'll take it into the flow room, and a graduate student from the School of Freshwater Sciences will run the test. And if they want the test certified, a professor will come down and certify them. And instead of waiting a month, they'll wait a few hours to have their results. This will speed up development and reduce the cost from all the testing costs. So we think all these things brought together, all of these things in the Water Accelerator building on the Freshwater Way in Milwaukee will have a dramatic impact on business development around water technology.
That's fabulous. Real quick, can you tell me about Milwaukee Water Council and what the history of water is in the area?
Well, Milwaukee Water Council grew out of an idea that I had about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was a result of Michael Porter, the professor from Harvard, who had written a seminal paper on clusters and regionalism, and the idea that areas should compete around their strengths. I've always felt Milwaukee has had a strength around water. In fact, this whole region was formed on the basis of fresh water. We were once the brewery capital of the United States. We were the tannery capital of the United States. Industries that required a lot of water, wet industries. We've lost a lot of those wet industries. Most of the breweries are gone, all the tanneries are gone. But a lot of the companies that formed 100 years ago to make the pumps and the valves and the filters that those industries needed have grown over the last 100 years into some of the largest water technology companies in the world. In fact, in this region, we have over 150 water technology companies. That's a higher concentration than anywhere else in the world. We also have 5 of the 11 largest water technology companies in the world. with major operations here in this region. So when you add all of that up, we already have a great concentration of water technology here. We just haven't focused on it. So over the last 5 years, the Water Council has brought all of those companies together and helped them work together, work with the universities, work with the government, bring everything they need to help grow that sector of the economy. I think it's really telling that in 1922, William Bruce wrote a book called The History of Milwaukee. And in that book, he has a quote that I'll never forget. He said, "The Milwaukee business leaders scoff at the city's image as a beer town because they know that the pumps and valves produced in Milwaukee process more water in a day than all the beer brewed in a year." Now that was in 1922. That was almost 100 years ago. Our city knew what they were all about. We were about water. We knew how to move it, how to process it. Yes, we fermented a lot of it into beer, but we did a lot of things with water, and we were experts at water. 100 years later, we have not lost that expertise. That's where this big opportunity lies. We have a huge opportunity for economic growth in this region around water technology.
Fabulous. One last question. I just came from Pat Mulroy's conference, the Water Smart Innovations Conference out in Las Vegas, and we were talking about the statement, water is local.
Yes.
Can you respond to that statement?
Well, people say water is local, and they're right, okay? And because water is a watershed. You've got to look at the watershed that you're involved in. For example, anything that affects the Mississippi watershed, if you live along the Mississippi, whether you're up in Minnesota or you're down in New Orleans, it affects your water. We happen to be in the Great Lakes water basin, and therefore water is important to us here. And so each of those basins have to be looked at a water system. But the problem with water as local is that for 100 years, we've not accepted that. For 100 years in this country, we have moved water to people. We have diverted rivers, we have dammed rivers, we have moved entire water systems. We've moved the Colorado River to the point where it no longer reaches Baja California. We've moved the Rio Grande to the point where it no longer reaches the Gulf of Mexico. We have made major changes to our water systems to bring water to people because people want to live where it's sunny and warm. The problem is most of the water in the world is where it's cloudy and cold. So we have pretty much played out moving water to people to the extent we can. Now we need to start moving people back to water. People need to start moving into the watershed that can support them. And we have strained certain watersheds like the Colorado River to the point where they can't support any more people. And now we have to look at economic growth in areas like Milwaukee, like the Great Lakes.
Fabulous.